The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty courtyard of the Colt Ranch, where Rebecca Walsh knelt scrubbing the wooden porch with raw, bleeding hands. Her once golden hair hung in matted strands around her gaunt face, and her dress, little more than rags now, clung to her thin frame. At 24, she looked decades older, worn down by 3 years of brutal labor and constant humiliation. "Faster, you worthless woman." Jeremiah Colt's voice cracked like a whip across the yard. The burly rancher stood in the doorway, his cruel eyes fixed on Rebecca's trembling form. "That porch better shine like a mirror, or you'll sleep with the pigs again tonight." Rebecca's hands moved faster, though every scrub sent fire through her aching joints. She had learned not to speak back, not to show defiance. The last time she had dared to defend herself, Colt had locked her in the root cellar for 3 days with nothing but stale water. "Please, Mr. Colt," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm working as fast as I can." Colt's boot connected with her ribs, sending her sprawling across the wet boards. "Did I ask you to speak? You're here because your own parents couldn't stand the sight of a barren woman. 3 years married to my cousin Thomas, and not even a hint of a child. Worthless." The words cut deeper than any physical blow. Rebecca remembered that terrible day when her father had shaken hands with Colt, accepting payment for his defective daughter. Her mother hadn't even looked back as they drove away, leaving Rebecca standing in this very courtyard like livestock sold at market. "Your parents were smart to get rid of you," Colt continued, circling her like a predator. "At least here you serve some purpose, even if it's just cleaning up after real people." As Rebecca struggled to her knees, the sound of approaching horses echoed across the ranch. A small group of riders emerged from the heat shimmer on the horizon, led by a tall man on a magnificent black stallion. Even from a distance, there was something different about him. The way he sat his horse with quiet confidence, the respectful distance he maintained from his companions. Nathan Rivers had traveled from the Colorado mountains to purchase horses, but as his group approached the Colt Ranch, his attention was immediately drawn to the scene unfolding on the porch. The sight of a woman being kicked while she worked sent a cold fury through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since losing his wife Sarah 2 years ago. "That's Jeremiah Colt," muttered Jake, one of Nathan's ranch hands. "Heard he's got some fine horses, but he's meaner than a rattlesnake." Nathan's jaw tightened as he watched Colt grab the woman by her hair, yanking her to her feet. Even from 50 yards away, he could see the pain and resignation in her posture, the way she had learned to make herself small to avoid further punishment. "Mr. Colt," Nathan called out as they rode into the courtyard, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to respect. "I'm Nathan Rivers from Colorado. I believe you received my telegram about purchasing horses." Colt immediately released Rebecca, who stumbled backward against the porch railing. His demeanor shifted to that of a businessman, though his eyes remained cold. "Mr. Rivers, welcome to Texas. I've got some of the finest horses this side of the Mississippi." As Nathan dismounted, his eyes briefly met Rebecca's. In that instant he saw something that made his breath catch, not just pain but a flicker of the person she had been before this place had broken her spirit. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, and despite everything, there was still a spark of dignity buried deep within them. "This here's my housekeeper," Colt said dismissively, noticing Nathan's gaze. "Rebecca, get back to work. These gentlemen have business to discuss." Rebecca nodded quickly and returned to her scrubbing, but Nathan noticed how her hands shook, how she flinched when Colt moved too close. Something twisted in his gut, a protective instinct he thought had died with Sarah. "Fine horses indeed," Nathan said, forcing his attention to the corrals where several magnificent animals grazed. But even as he discussed bloodlines and prices with Colt, part of his mind remained focused on the woman working silently nearby, and a plan began forming in the back of his mind. The negotiations continued through the afternoon heat, with Nathan carefully selecting 6 horses while observing the dynamics of the Colt Ranch. What he saw made his stomach turn. Rebecca was treated worse than the animals, given scraps of food, spoken to only in harsh commands, and subjected to casual cruelty that made Nathan's hands clench into fists. During a break in negotiations, Nathan watched as Rebecca carried heavy buckets of water from the well, her thin arms straining with the weight. When she stumbled, spilling some water, Colt backhanded her across the face with such force that she fell to her knees. "Clumsy fool. That water doesn't come free," Colt snarled. Nathan stepped forward before he could stop himself. "That seems unnecessary, Colt. She's just doing her job." Colt's eyes narrowed dangerously. "This is my property, Rivers. I'll handle my people as I see fit." "Your people?" Nathan's voice carried a deadly quiet that made his own men step back. In the Colorado mountains, Nathan Rivers was known as a fair but formidable man, and right now, every instinct told him to put Colt in the ground. "She's bound to me legal-like," Colt said with a cruel smile. "Her own parents sold her to me when she proved worthless as a wife. 3 years married and couldn't even produce one child. What good is a woman who can't do the one thing God made her for?" Nathan felt something cold settle in his chest. He had seen broken horses before, animals that had been beaten until their spirits were crushed. But this was a human being, a woman who deserved dignity and respect, not this systematic destruction of her soul. "I'll take the horses," Nathan said finally. "But I have another proposition for you." Colt raised an eyebrow, interested. "What kind of proposition?" Nathan glanced at Rebecca, who was still kneeling by the spilled water, her cheek already swelling from the blow. "My ranch in Colorado is isolated. I need someone to manage the household, tend to domestic matters. Someone reliable. You want to hire one of my hands?" "No," Nathan said carefully. "I want to buy her contract." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock and something that might have been hope. Colt's expression shifted from confusion to calculating greed. "Buy her contract?" Colt laughed harshly. "She's not worth much, Rivers. Can't cook worth a damn, breaks more than she fixes, and she's barren as a desert. What would you want with damaged goods?" Nathan's jaw worked as he fought to keep his voice level. "That's my concern. Name your price." Colt's eyes gleamed. He had paid Rebecca's parents $50 for her, and she had worked off that debt twice over in the past year. Anything he got now would be pure profit. $500, Colt said, expecting Nathan to laugh and walk away. "Done." Nathan's immediate acceptance made Colt's eyes widen. "I'll have the papers drawn up tonight." Rebecca felt the world tilt around her. $500? More money than she had ever seen in her life. But what did this stranger want with her? Her experience with men had taught her that kindness was usually a mask for something darker. "Rebecca," Nathan said gently, approaching her slowly as if she were a spooked horse. "I want you to understand, this isn't what you think. I'm offering you a chance at a different life, nothing more." She looked up at him, searching his face for the lie, the cruel joke that must be coming. But his eyes were steady and kind, with a sadness in them that spoke of his own losses. "Why?" she whispered, the first word she had spoken directly to him. Nathan knelt down so they were at eye level, ignoring Colt's impatient huffing. "Because everyone deserves a chance to be free. Because what's happening here is wrong and I have the power to stop it. And what do you expect in return?" Her voice was barely audible, but there was steel beneath the fear. "Honest work for honest pay. Respect for respect. Nothing more, nothing less." Nathan stood and extended his hand to help her up. "The choice is yours, Rebecca. You can stay here or you can come with me to Colorado and start over." Rebecca stared at his outstretched hand. In 3 years of marriage and 1 year of servitude, no man had ever offered her a choice about anything. The very concept felt foreign, dangerous, impossible. But as she looked into Nathan Rivers' eyes, she saw something she had almost forgotten existed: genuine human decency. With trembling fingers she reached out and took his hand. The journey from Texas to Colorado took 2 weeks, and every mile carried Rebecca further from the nightmare of her past. Nathan had provided her with proper clothes, a gentle mare to ride, and most importantly, space to begin healing. He never pressed her to talk, never demanded explanations for her flinching when he moved too quickly, never questioned why she sometimes woke screaming from nightmares. As they traveled through the changing landscape, from the flat, harsh plains of Texas to the rolling hills and eventually the majestic peaks of Colorado, Rebecca began to remember who she had been before Jeremiah Colt had tried to break her spirit. "Tell me about your ranch," she said one evening as they sat around the campfire. It was the first time she had initiated a conversation, and Nathan looked up from his coffee with surprise and pleasure. "It's in a valley between 2 mountain ranges," he said, his voice taking on a warmth she hadn't heard before. "The house sits on a rise overlooking a meadow where wildflowers bloom in spring. There's a stream that runs year-round, and in winter, the snow makes everything look like a fairy tale." "It sounds beautiful," Rebecca said softly. "Peaceful." "It is. Sometimes too peaceful." Nathan's expression grew distant. My wife Sarah loved it there. She said it was like living in God's own garden. Rebecca noticed the past tense, the pain that flickered across his features. What happened to her? Nathan was quiet for so long that Rebecca thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old grief. She died giving birth to our son. The baby, he didn't make it either. The doctor said if we had been closer to town maybe? He shook his head. I've been alone there for 2 years now. Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes. That's why you helped me. You know what it's like to lose everything. Maybe, Nathan admitted. Or maybe I just couldn't stand to see another person treated like they don't matter. As they continued their journey, Rebecca began to see glimpses of the man Nathan truly was. He was patient with his horses, kind to his men, and respectful to everyone they encountered. When they stopped in small towns for supplies, she watched him interact with shopkeepers and innkeepers with genuine warmth and fairness. You're not what I expected, she told him one afternoon as they rode through a mountain pass so beautiful it took her breath away. What did you expect? Someone who would expect things. Payment for his kindness. Rebecca's voice was carefully neutral, but Nathan understood the implications. He reined in his horse and turned to face her fully. Rebecca, I want you to understand something. What happened to you, the way you were treated, that's not normal. That's not how people should treat each other. You don't owe me anything beyond honest work and you never will. Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself to shed in months. I don't know how to believe that. You don't have to believe it yet, Nathan said gently. Just give yourself time to see it. When they finally crested the last ridge and Nathan's ranch spread out below them, Rebecca gasped. The house was larger than she had expected, built of logs and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. The meadow Nathan had described was dotted with cattle, and the stream caught the afternoon sunlight like scattered diamonds. Welcome home, Rebecca, Nathan said, and for the first time in years the word home didn't fill her with dread. As they rode down into the valley, Nathan pointed out various buildings. The barn, the bunkhouse for the ranch hands, the chicken coop, the vegetable garden that had been neglected since Sarah's death. You can change anything you want about the house, he said. Make it comfortable for yourself. Rebecca looked at him in amazement. You're giving me permission to change your home? I'm giving you permission to make it your home too. That night, as Rebecca lay in the comfortable bed in her own room with a lock on the door that Nathan had pointedly shown her how to use, she stared up at the ceiling and tried to process the magnitude of what had happened to her. For the first time in 4 years she was safe. For the first time in her adult life she had choices. But even as relief flooded through her, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings. Good things didn't last. Kindness always came with a price. And men like Nathan Rivers, men who seemed too good to be true, usually were. Only time would tell if her cynicism was justified, or if she had truly found the sanctuary her battered soul desperately needed. 6 months passed like a gentle dream. Rebecca threw herself into caring for Nathan's ranch house with a dedication born of gratitude and a desperate need to prove her worth. The neglected rooms came alive under her touch. Windows sparkled, gardens bloomed, and the smell of fresh bread and hearty meals filled the air for the first time since Sarah's death. Nathan watched her transformation with wonder. The broken, frightened woman he had rescued in Texas was slowly revealing herself to be intelligent, capable, and possessed of a quiet strength that took his breath away. She had a gift with the animals, a green thumb in the garden, and a way of making the lonely ranch house feel like a true home again. You've worked a miracle here, Nathan told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. I had forgotten what it felt like to come home to warmth and light. Rebecca blushed at the compliment, still unused to praise after years of criticism and cruelty. It's the least I can do. You saved my life, Nathan. You saved mine too, he said quietly. I was just existing before you came here. Now I'm living again. The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Over the months, their relationship had evolved from employer and employee to something deeper. Friendship, companionship, and an understanding born of shared pain and healing. It was during the 7th month that Rebecca made a discovery that changed everything. She had been feeling unwell for weeks, tired, nauseous, emotional in ways that reminded her of. But no, that was impossible. She was barren. Everyone had told her so. Dr. Matthews, the traveling physician who served the remote mountain communities, confirmed what Rebecca had hardly dared to hope. "You're about 2 months along, Mrs.?" He paused, realizing he didn't know her marital status. "Walsh," Rebecca whispered, her hands instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "But how is this possible? I was married for 3 years and never." Dr. Matthews, a kind man in his 60s, smiled gently. "Sometimes stress, poor nutrition, and emotional trauma can prevent conception. Your body was protecting itself. Now that you're healthy and safe." He shrugged. "Nature has a way of healing itself when given the chance." Rebecca walked home in a daze, her mind reeling. She was carrying Nathan's child, a man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect, who had never even kissed her, though she had seen the longing in his eyes and felt the answering pull in her own heart. She found Nathan in the barn, tending to a mare who was about to foal. He looked up when she entered, and his smile faded when he saw her expression. "Rebecca? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Nathan, I need to tell you something." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "Dr. Matthews was here today." Nathan's face went pale. "Are you ill? Injured?" "No, She took a deep breath. "I'm going to have a baby." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He sank onto a hay bale, staring at her in shock. "A baby? But you said you couldn't." "I thought I couldn't. Everyone told me I was barren, worthless because I couldn't give my husband children. But Dr. Matthews says that sometimes trauma can prevent conception, and now that I'm safe and healthy." She trailed off, watching his face for any sign of his reaction. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what she had told him. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, the first truly joyful expression she had seen from him. "A baby," he whispered, standing and moving toward her. "Rebecca, are you happy about this?" "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "I'm terrified. What if I'm not a good mother? What if something goes wrong? What if you don't want?" Nathan stopped her words by gently taking her hands in his. "Rebecca Walsh, you are the strongest, most caring woman I have ever known. You will be an extraordinary mother. And as for what I want..." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I want whatever makes you happy. If you want this child, then I want this child. If you want to raise him or her here with me, then there's nothing in this world that would make me happier." Tears streamed down Rebecca's face, tears of relief, joy, and something else she was finally ready to acknowledge. "Nathan, I think I love you." "I know I love you," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I have for months. I just didn't know if you could ever feel the same way about a man after what you've been through." "You're not just any man," Rebecca said, stepping closer to him. "You're the man who saw me as a person worth saving when everyone else saw me as damaged goods. You're the man who gave me back my dignity, my choices, my life." When Nathan kissed her, it was with a tenderness that spoke of love, respect, and infinite patience. It was nothing like the rough, demanding kisses she had endured in her marriage. This was a promise, a beginning, a declaration of a future built on mutual love and respect. 8 months later, Rebecca gave birth to a healthy daughter they named Hope, a name that seemed perfect for a child born from the ashes of despair into a life filled with love and possibility. As Nathan held his daughter for the first time, with Rebecca resting peacefully beside him, he marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. He had thought his life was over when he lost Sarah and their son. Rebecca had thought she was worthless, broken beyond repair. But together they had discovered that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the darkest soil. Sometimes love comes not in the form you expect, but in exactly the form you need. And sometimes, the people the world discards are the very ones who hold the power to heal hearts and create miracles. In the Colorado mountains, far from the cruelty and judgment of the world below, Nathan and Rebecca Rivers built a life based on the radical idea that every person deserves dignity, respect, and love. Their daughter would grow up knowing that her worth was not determined by what she could produce or provide, but simply by the fact that she existed and was loved. And in the end, that made all the difference.